The Fort Erie Podcast with Brent Jones. Brent Jones starts now.
Yes, that's me. I'm Brent Jones. Hello, welcome to the show. Ann Waters is going to be joining me a little bit later. Ann, as you may recall, is the Community and Family Services Manager at Salvation Army, and she needs our help, Fort Erie. So we're going to hear what she has to say. So that's coming up. But I wanted to start this episode by reminding you, dear listener, that change is the only constant. And I know this is probably going to land me in a bit of hot water for what I'm about to say, but a ways back, I don't remember if it was James Kulik or somebody else wrote it in the newspaper. I remember reading somewhere locally, somebody notable in Fort Erie said that people want Fort Erie to remain exactly the same as the day that they got here. I'm going to elaborate. I'm going to sort of expound on that a little bit. I think people want small towns in general, because we love nostalgia. People want small towns like ours to be the same as sort of their earliest memory of it forever. So I've never shied away from saying my wife and I moved here 9 years ago. We have, 9 years of history. We planted roots here. We bought our first home in Fort Erie. We're raising our family here. We chose Fort Erie. We chose, like so many other people who left the GTA, to come here and make this our home. And, there's a tendency that when people move here from the GTA, they want it to be that small, quaint town that attracted them there. And then from that point forward, they sort of oppose new development from that point forward. And for people who've lived here forever, where their earliest memories of the town of Fort Erie are from when they were children, they kind of, they still think of the town sort of through that lens. I think there's a lot of truth to that people want their small towns to remain exactly the same as how they first came to know them. The reason I'm bringing this up, and the reason I say this is going to land me in hot water for saying so, is that at the start of the month, the Thunder Bay snack bar torn down. And Facebook groups, no matter which Fort Erie Facebook group you were a part of, people were putting up photos. They were sharing their memories of having gone there for, I don't know, what was it, milkshakes or whatever. I don't even know what the Thunder Bay snack bar served, because that story didn't matter to me at all. I couldn't care less that it's gone. Yeah, I said it. You can call the Byrd Box, and we'll get to that in a moment, and you can leave me a nasty message for saying so. I don't care. It's gone. It was a great part of history, but that just means it's now time to make way for something new. Because comments on Facebook were just overwhelmingly like, oh my God, it's this big deal. It's tearing down a part of history. Look, I never knew it, so I can't really comment. But here's what I can say. A lot of people in the comments were complaining, the same group that complained that housing prices are out of control, were complaining that there would be new housing going in where the chip shack or snack bar or whatever it was called, where it used to be, that there'd be new houses going in there. And spoiler alert, the more housing supply there is, the lower prices become. When there's a lot of something, it costs less. When there's very little of something and increased demand, it costs more. More homes are a good solution. But you go, well, hey, we can't just have houses everywhere. What about all of our precious nostalgia? What about the Thunder Bay snack bar that was there serving us decades ago? Well, guys, there's a place called the Chip Shack on Ridge Road, downtown Ridgeway, that wasn't there decades ago. You could certainly take your business over there, support a local business. There's a food truck on Dominion Road called Beach Bites. They have great food, very friendly staff, reasonable prices, big portions. That wasn't there decades ago. You could certainly take your business there too. This is what I mean by saying that there's an ebb and flow to all businesses, to all great things. And look, I'm not saying you shouldn't look back and have fond memories, by all means. But somebody went so far in the comments as to say this town doesn't care at all about preserving its history. Because the Thunder Bay snack bar was torn down, this town does not care at all about preserving our history. Which history are you talking about? Because we don't have topless bars here anymore? There was like 3 of them, a few decades ago. Because you can't go to the A&P on Jarvis Street to do your groceries because, your kids aren't going to work at Horton Steel. Like, what history are you talking about? Because from where I'm sitting, coming into Fort Erie, from somebody who lived in the GTA or sort of proximitous to the GTA his whole life, I think this town does better than most at preserving its history. what about the old fort? That's an obvious example. The old fort being preserved. What about the dollhouse? What about Ridgeway Battlefield? What about the Railway Museum? There are so many historic sites around this town that are preserved and put on display. I don't understand losing your mind over the Thunder Bay snack bar closing. Anyway, I think we preserve our history better than most. You're free to disagree with me. That's totally fine. But I have a funny feeling the same people who would disagree with me on this point are the same folks around town who still think the Crystal Beach Amusement Park is going to come back.
Fort Erie job leads.
Well, if you're on the hunt for a new job, I have a few leads that might be able to help you out, point you in the right direction. First off, the Breakfast Beacon at 404 Ridgeway Road in Crystal Beach is hiring all positions, wait staff, kitchen aide, cook, bus person. You can apply by taking a resume in person. Drop it off. You can also apply via Facebook if you want to look up the Breakfast Beacon on Facebook. The Employment Professionals Canada, EPC, they are looking to hire general laborers in Fort Erie to work at a mail distribution center. It, of course, doesn't specify which mail distribution center, but I'm sure you could figure it out. You can apply for that one by emailing your resume to Matthew, Matthew, at epc-on.com. Crescent Park Lodge is hiring personal support workers, both full-time and part-time permanent positions. The rate of pay varies from $19 to $26 per hour per the collective agreement. The Fort Erie Public Library is looking to hire a children's summer program assistant. This is a full-time position, but it is only for the summer. It is a fixed-term contract. And just lastly, Shoppers Drug Mart is looking to hire a post office clerk. This is for the Fort Erie location on Garrison Road. And to apply for that position, you can do it right on the company website, right on the Shoppers Drug Mart website.
Fort Erie questions and answers based on the Facebook group by the same name.
Welcome to Fort Erie Questions and Answers. It's always fascinating, Fort Erie, to see what's on your mind. Let's start off with a simple one here. Leah says, I'm looking for recommendations on where to take a lawnmower for repairs. And the most common response that I saw come up in the comments was Maxim's Small Engine Repair, now located to Ridge Road, by the way, in case you were thinking it was still on Dufferin Street. It has relocated to Ridge Road. I have taken both my lawnmower and my snowblower there, and I can say good things about the work they do and the service that they do. Lisa asks, what is a good natural sedative for Rottweilers? And I'm just going to volunteer up front that probably not having a Rottweiler is the best natural sedative for a Rottweiler. But CBD, a bunch of people mentioned there's CBD oil for dogs that calms them. I can't comment on that. I've never given my dogs CBD oil. One person in the comments mentions getting a prescription for trazodone. I can say from experience that trazodone is excellent for taking, not knocking out a dog, but taking the edge off. Absolutely. But I don't know that that's something I'd necessarily want to give my dogs every day, if that makes sense. And then after that, there were a bunch of keyboard warriors who said, maybe take your dog for more walks, which I'm sure, didn't already occur to the original poster. Let's see. Somebody named Anastasia has a whole pile. I'm not going to read this whole post because it's very long. There's a bunch of photos. She has a whole bunch of scrap. She's willing to pay anybody $75 to take it away, or half of whatever is made if it's less than $150. That's getting awfully specific for somebody that says this needs to be done ASAP. I would think if I had a whole pile of scrap, regardless of what the other person does with it, I might be happy to have them take it off my hands for $75. Nonetheless, the most common response in the comments was Andy Haywood. And you can look up Andy on Facebook. Andy is sort of Fort Erie's resident scrap metal remover. So if you have scrap metal to be removed, reach out to Andy Haywood. And then we have Jim, who says, we are moving and are having a hard time finding boxes. Does anyone have advice on where to find some? So I'm just going to say before I get into the comments, when I list somebody's home for sale, one of the things I will just include standard is getting packing supplies for my seller clients. So boxes, bubble wrap, tape, that kind of thing. And it actually is tricky to purchase boxes in Fort Erie. There's a couple of spots where you can get them, and people do mention them in the comments, which I'll get to in a second. I hate to promote sending business out of town, but you can buy cardboard moving boxes from Canadian Tire in Port Colborne. They have tons of them. The port location does, Fort Erie does not. I don't know why. But of course, in the response, people mentioned you can buy boxes from U-Haul. I think most people know that, except the U-Haul boxes they're expensive. In my opinion, for a cardboard box, they're a little bit on the pricey side. People did mention like the Walmart frozen food aisle. There's a gray bin where you can take boxes. That's great. But then there were just some really bizarre answers here. People mentioned things like go into the bin and behind Dollarama. I mean, I guess you could do that. It's just, I don't know if the original poster was asking to go dumpster diving this weekend. Anyway, it's always fun to see what's on your mind, Fort Erie. Keep up the great questions in this Facebook group.
It's Fort Erie's answering machine, the Byrd Box.
This is the Byrd Box. This is the part in the show where I play your voicemail messages. You can call the Byrd Box 24 hours a day. Anything on your mind, something you see around town, something you heard on the show, any topic. The number is 289-599-BYRD. Byrd. Call anything you want to squawk about, leave a message, and I'll play it so the whole town can hear it. Now, last week we were talking about pizza, where you like to get your pizza, how often per month your family orders pizza. And our first caller probably likes pizza a lot. Here, have a listen.
I wanted to leave a message and let you know how often we order pizza, and it is once a week, at least.
At least. Okay. So that implies maybe twice a week, 3 times a week. There's 21 meals in a week. So it might be fun to see how many of them you could have pizza, for the meal. Look, I mean, they say there's such a thing as too much of a good thing, but I don't know. I mean, maybe you're just living your best life eating pizza three times a day. Who knows? This next caller wanted to share her favorite pizza place around town and also a quick tip if you're going to be ordering pizza.
Hey, Fort Erie. Got to chime in with my favorite pizza place, The Barrel. And I've got a hot tip for you. When you are ordering your pizza, ask for extra sauce. Okay.
Yeah, that voice doesn't sound familiar to me at all. You know what? I do love pizza from The Barrel. Extra sauce is always a good idea. Even when I get pizza from Domino's, I'll ask for extra sauce. I mean, why not? Pizza sauce is delicious. And I find that when you have extra sauce on a pizza, if you go to reheat the leftovers the next day, I just find it reheats a little bit better as well. Now, on to this week's topic. I did post on social media this week that we were going to be talking on the show today about, sort of Fort Erie nostalgia and things that have changed over the years for the better or for the worse. So I asked folks if they had something they saw, good or bad, that has changed around town, to please leave me a message and I'd be happy to play it on the show. So let's get into this first one. And I swear I did not ask this person to leave this message, and I did not pay them. Have a listen.
Changes to Fort Erie, you ask? Well, a few years ago, the town welcomed a newcomer to the area, a man named Brent Jones. Brent bought a house, started a family, got himself into real estate where he's helped dozens of families in the area. He's a constant supporter of local businesses and just an all-around good guy.
Oh, that's sweet. Thanks a lot. Look, again, I did not ask this person to call and leave that message, but hey, if you want to leave a message and flatter me, that's fine. I mean, I'm sure it'll all balance itself out because people will also call and say not so kind things. So really totally up to you, however you're feeling that day. Just to be clear, to put things in the correct order, we moved to town, bought a house, I got into real estate. Then we started a family. But regardless, hopefully, if you're listening to this show, you feel that we'll call it a rival or my presence here in Fort Erie has been a net positive. But in terms of this final call I'm going to play, here's a lady who is not so positive. Here we go.
Okay, one of the best things I liked about moving to Fort Erie was that it was small, it was quaint, and it just felt really homely, to raise my son. And then it turned into that it being the worst part about it is that
What?
there was nothing to do. There was nowhere to go,
Come
barely
on.
any places to eat. I mean, I know that they're bringing in more fast food restaurants, but it's not quality anymore. I didn't see the value in living in Fort Erie anymore.
Okay. Well, then if you didn't see the value in living in Fort Erie, lady, go kick rocks. I'm glad you left. And I hope you don't come back. I mean, hey, last week, one of our callers listed off something like 28 different pizza places. And here's this caller who says there's nowhere to eat. So I made a short list. I put some things together. Really sorry you couldn't find something to do with your son. But just going off this short list I put together, we have countless parks in this town. I mean, I take my daughter to a different park almost every day of the week, and a good number of those parks are equipped with splash pads for the summer. We've got Safari Niagara, which takes a whole day to go through and do everything in there. You can get a season's pass for less than the cost of 2 visits, and you can take your kid to the zoo as many times as you want during the summer. Bay Beach resident passes were available last week. Hopefully a lot of you got them from the Leisureplex, but Bay Beach is open all summer long. We have the Play Center, Little Bridgeburg on Jarvis Street, part of the regional limo building there. There's a bunch of early on centers nearby. They're all clean, well-maintained, well-staffed. Fort Erie Public Library has programs for kids of all ages at all their branches virtually every day, especially throughout the summer, but throughout the school year as well. When your kids get a little older, there's the Friendship Trail for riding bikes or rollerblading. We're right on Lake Erie and the Niagara River, so there's certainly nothing stopping you from going boating, going fishing, even golfing when your kids are at that age. If they're playing sports, we've of course got the Leisureplex, Crystal Ridge Arena. There's tons of sports. There's numerous festivals and events throughout the year. There's like Ridgeway Ridge Fest, the Santa Claus Parade, the Crystal Beach Waterfront Supper Market. I mean, look, I'm going to stop my list here. Like, I don't know, what do you want, lady? Like, do you want the mayor to come to your door in a kilt playing the bagpipes? Like, the onus is on you. If you can't find anything to do, if you think this town is boring, you're probably just a boring person, a boring, unimaginative person. You are one of those people who skulk around town, calling our town Fort Dreary, and I'm glad you left, and I hope you don't come back.
Have something you want to squawk about? Let the whole town know what's on your mind. Call the Byrd Box at 289-599-2973. That's 289-599-BYRD.
I think it's time to resurrect an old feature that I used to do on this show a couple of years ago. We were talking at the start of the episode today. I should say, about change is the only constant, about how sometimes things and businesses close to make way for new things. And it reminded me that I used to do a feature in this show called This Month in Fort Erie History. Because while I totally respect that change is inevitable, while I don't think it's a great idea to lose your mind every time a little piece of Fort Erie nostalgia disappears, I do think celebrating some of that nostalgia sometimes can be a fun thing. 50 years ago, in May of 1973, something very special and near and dear to my heart opened up in Fort Erie. I hadn't even been born yet, but it would play a crucial role during my formative years. And I'm going to tell you all about that in This Month in Fort Erie History, coming up just a little bit later. But for right now, let's get into my chat with Ann Waters.
The Fort Erie Podcast.
Well, joining me on the phone right now is Ann Waters. Ann, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
And welcome back to the show. And for those of you listening who maybe are not familiar, Ann, I believe your title is Community and Family Services Manager at Salvation Army. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. See, first try, I feel like I'm getting better at this with people's titles. How's the day going?
Got it. It was an interesting day today. It was very busy. We had a lot of utility appointments, people in need of assistance who, with disconnections now up, who maybe struggled over the winter to pay their bills, coming in for assistance for that.
Oh, wow. Okay. So maybe refresh my memory, and for the benefit of listeners who maybe, haven't caught when you were previously on the show, when you talk about disconnections and some of the services the Salvation Army offers, what are we talking about here?
Well, for us, we handle utility appointments. So if somebody is in arrears on their utilities up for disconnection or already disconnected on their gas, their hydro, or their water. If they qualify, we are able to assist with some funding. However, today as I was going through, I'm seeing that we are almost drained dry for this year. So we have different pools of money that we can draw from. Mm-hmm. One is the Ontario Energy Board mandates that both gas and hydro set aside a portion of their income to assist low-income households. So that is almost dry. Then the region also provides Niagara Emergency Energy Fund, and that is almost dry. So we're kind of at a point where people are not going to be able to get assistance with their utilities from us pretty soon.
And that's by May. Like we're in May right now.
We're in May, and disconnections started this month. They started May 1st.
Okay. But I mean, is that usual? Like in a typical year, would you say the pool is almost dry by May? Does that normally happen, or is this year a bit of an anomaly?
No, we're 2 weeks into disconnections, and we're almost out of money.
Oh my God!
Normally, that's the last year. I think it was July. We were out on LEAP, and then that's the Ontario Energy Board one, and then I think we had NEAP right through until about October. So yeah, we're between a rock and a hard place right now.
Well, I guess it's a bit of an awkward transition, or maybe it's not. I know you wanted to talk about some of the changes within Salvation Army. I mean, hopefully some of these changes are that you have a magic solution to fix all this.
I mean, those of us who've been in this, I don't want to say industry, but who've been with charitable organizations that try and help people in need, those of us who've been in it for a while, we expected this to happen. We knew that, all the funding from the government that was up front was great, but we were concerned with a year and a half, 2 years in where we were going to be. And unfortunately, it's happened. The funding from the government just isn't there. The economy has turned so upside down that people who have never needed to use a food bank are now coming in, and these people can be working full time. Sometimes it's couples both working full time who just can't make ends meet because of the increases in rent, the increase in the cost of food, just general cost of living. So they're now really struggling, and so a lot of our donors are now coming in as recipients.
Wow. So there's a whole number of factors. I feel like there's a lot to sort of unpack there. So there's a reduction in government funding. At the same time, we're seeing, inflation is impacting cost of living. So what is there a solution to this? I guess I mean maybe I'm asking sort of a big picture question right now, but I mean what from you obviously have a lot of experience in this role with Salvation Army. Is there a path forward here that you see where, things could be better?
I mean, we sit around tables all the time talking about how we can adjust social assistance, how we can, bring in new programs to help the people who are living at or below, low income levels. Nobody ever says we need to talk to big corporations and say, look, you're making record profits. Maybe don't make quite such a big profit. Give something back to the community and don't charge $7 for this when you can charge $3.50. Because maybe you'll make up in volume what you're not making in that one sale. I mean, that's just a me thing. But
sure.
For me, it's, if companies just got on the bandwagon and said, look, we realize we're part of the problem, we're going to try and help fix it. Because every time you put up minimum wage, which, I mean, is necessary so people can live, then especially small business owners have to pass that on to the consumer. So we're just in a vicious cycle with that.
Right.
So that's my soapbox on that one.
Well, no, that's good. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I want to hear, right? I mean, you are in the trenches in a way that I'm not, right? So, I mean, I certainly hear a lot of unfortunate stories with respect to housing, being in real estate, but I don't have, nobody comes to my office looking for a meal because they're hungry. That's not something that I have to deal with. That's something that you see, right? So getting back to some of the changes you mentioned, that you kind of mentioned offline with Salvation Army, I mean, what are those changes, and are they going to potentially improve or some of these problems?
With the funding that the government and other organizations were giving out, we got quite a few grants during COVID. So with that, we were able to basically redo our entire food bank. So now instead of people coming in and going to a 10-foot by 9-foot room in the basement with a couple of old metal shelves in it, we got store shelves. We got fridges and freezers that are like you see in Avondale. So now we no longer have a church renting our facility, so we moved up to the sanctuary. So we're now on the main floor where it's nice and bright. It's open. People come in. They have actual store shelves that they can grocery shop. They can go to the freezers and see what we have to offer, and they can say, hey, yeah, I want that. We're getting food from every grocery store in this town. We are getting it from Joe's. We're getting it from Jesse and Kelly's. We're getting it from Sobeys. We're getting food from Walmart. And all that is coming in our door so we can get it back out to the community. So we're getting meat, we're getting produce, we're getting frozen foods, ice cream, all kinds of things that we weren't getting before. And now that can go back out to the community because before it would have gone into the dumpster. But now on the flip side, because so many people are trying to make ends meet for their own families and they don't have that extra $5 or $10 to buy peanut butter or a box of cereal, our dry food has gone way down. I was going through last week. We had no granola bars in the basement, like in the building. So we were totally out of granola bars. I've never seen that. We have some things in plenitude, like KD. We've got lots of KD. You need KD, come see me. But some other things, we're running out.
And now we're talking about the location on Gilmore Road, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
and
okay.
Our thrift store, some people have probably seen that the store is closing June 23rd, but we will still be here at 255 Gilmore, and we are still going to be assisting people who need support.
So what are the hours on Gilmore Road? If somebody says, "Hey, I'm in need," I need to come by. I need to see what's in Anne's freezer here. How does that work? I mean, is it by appointment? Can somebody just come by? How does that part work?
So what we do for Food Bank is people can come once a calendar month.
Okay.
So every month people can come in. All they have to do is bring ID for everyone in the household. We ask for proof of income, not because we decline people based on how much money they make, but rather to make sure they're getting the support they need. And based on the number of people in the house, we give them points. So a single person gets 9 points, but that's for KD and soup and crackers and dry goods. The milk, the bread, the pizza, we get pizzas from Little Caesars. So anything we get that's perishable, we count toward points. That's all in addition to their 9 points of dry goods.
Earlier in May, I did a food drive for Cope, specifically non-perishables, toiletries. And what really surprised me, taking these items over, I couldn't help but notice all the shelves were bare. They're empty. And I mean, it sounds like in some respects, you're running up against the same thing, where, the demand is so high. I know you mentioned earlier, I mean, there's different corporate solutions potentially, but what could people in Fort Erie maybe do right now to offer support? Is donations? Do you prefer cash donations, people dropping off food, volunteering? What are some of the ways that people could help Salvation Army?
All of the above.
Did I miss any? Maybe there's more that I didn't get. I don't know.
If somebody wants to organize a food drive, give me a call. Let me know. We can, talk about a food drive. Some people, I have one family that every year they go out and just canvass their neighborhood and do a food drive for it that way.
Right.
But so that could be done. Sending cash to us, certainly, because then we can go out and we can buy the food. Gift cards for the grocery stores. That's another good option because then it can either be given to a client or I can go out and purchase what we're missing from the shelves. Like when you say empty shelves, I kind of look at it and cringe because when we just brought people back in for the first time since COVID started at the beginning of April with all our new shelving. And I had it so packed and it looked great, and now it's almost empty. Even though we're refilling it all the time, we don't have the product to refill with.
Right.
So I'm just hoping that my order comes in. I placed an order and I'm waiting for it to come in. But when I go downstairs and I look at our shelves, at the beginning of COVID, every shelf was full. We had pallets on the floor. Sometimes they were, like 4 feet tall, and every banana box was full of food. I still have those pallets, but now every box is empty.
So do you maybe want to give yourself a little plug here, like give out your contact information if somebody would like to get in touch with you and say, hey, Ann, I've either got time or money or product, or I got something here to help. Do you want to share how listeners can get in touch with you?
Sure. We have our email. It's my name, which is ANNE.WATTERS@salvationarmy.ca, or our phone number, 905-871-1592. Those are probably the easiest. If somebody wants to come to the door and talk to me, I'm here. Our doors are open kind of to the public Monday to Friday from 10 until 3, but I'm usually here 9 till 4:30.
Okay. And you're just, of course, making an exception today so you can speak to yours truly.
You got it.
You're staying after hours to get on the Fort Erie podcast. I love your dedication. That's great. I did want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, and I don't know how much you can comment on it because I know that the sort of the thrift store and what you do are separate entities, but coming up in June, the thrift store will be closing. That was announced. Yeah. Can I ask why it's closing? Are you able to comment on that? Or what? I think a lot of people depended on that thrift store too, and that's going away. So what's the rationale for that?
We also depend on the thrift store because the proceeds that they made helped keep our doors open. So they weren't just in business for them; their money kept us going.
Okay.
So with the loss of that, unfortunately. Part of it is, rents go up.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was saying before, minimum wage goes up. So to be good stewards of the donations and the dollars that we get, the decision was made that it was going to cost more than it was to keep it open than it would be to look at other avenues for the money, because we want to put the money where it can best help people in need in this community.
Sure. So if I'm understanding correctly, then it just became an issue of efficiency, really, that there was a more efficient use of the of the dollars to go around, let's say. Well, one of the other things I know you're involved in and that you wanted to speak about was the coldest night of the year, which if I'm understanding right, that event didn't happen this year, but you're hoping it will next year, and you're looking for a coordinator for that. So maybe if you could share with listeners, what is the coldest night of the year? And if you are in fact looking for a coordinator to sort of spearhead that, what would be involved?
Okay, thank you so much for asking about that. Last year was my third year to try and get it off the ground here. And the first 2 years I wasn't able to because we couldn't get a coordinator. This past year we had one, but unfortunately they had to bow out due to some health concerns and some other things in their life. And with only 2 staff here, I couldn't take it on myself. So unfortunately we had to let it go. So Coldest Night is it's an annual event. It's kind of like a walkathon, but not like the old ones where you had to walk 15 miles. This is a 2 kilometer, let me get it right, 2.5 kilometer or 1 kilometer, shoot. The maximum is 5 kilometers. So I think, 1 kilometer and 5 kilometers.
Okay.
And so it's held on what is statistically the coldest night of the year in Canada, which is usually around the last Saturday in February. So that's when it's held so that people kind of get an idea of what it's like to be out on the street in the cold.
Okay.
So it's just going out, doing that walk. It could be done. Usually it's done on a route, but if you can't, you can do it in your own neighborhood and, just sign up as a team and do it that way. But normally it's done on a set route where we get sponsors. I mean, we had talked to you about, and you had said you'd certainly be interested in talking with us, which was wonderful.
For sure.
Appreciate that.
For sure.
So there are sponsors for different rest stops and different parts of the event. So we're looking for business partners, business sponsors on that. The coordinator is someone who just kind of takes it on. The work starts in November, but there's not really a lot until January. So November, December, you're just kind of getting your feet under you, trying to get a team together to help you run the event. So there's like about 4 different team captains that you want to try and recruit, and then each of those team captains put together their own team of volunteers.
Okay.
So, for example, this past year, our new fire chief for Fort Erie, Mark Smith, was going to take on the route. And he was doing it in memory of his wife, who used to work for us and was very involved with Coldest Night in St. Catharines. So he was going to do that for us. And unfortunately, I felt like I let him down by losing it too, because I know how much the event means to Mark. But he was bringing some of the fire guys on, and they were going to be in charge of the route and making sure people were safe and all that, that end of it. So the coordinator is building a team, getting them organized, getting the interest up in the community to get teams of walkers together. So you sign up, let's say, just for example, your RE/MAX office.
Okay.
You say, okay, we're going to put in a team. So you get all your other agents together, you put that team together, and you raise money.
Sorry to interrupt, but it sounds a bit like you're collecting pledges then, really, for your team is. Okay, got it.
And you could challenge, let's say, every other real estate agency in town and go, okay, we're saying we're going to raise this. What are you guys going to do?
I feel like you've plotted out how I'm going to get involved next year. It's like you've already got the roadmap ready.
Well, maybe. But I mean, schools can do it.
Right.
Teachers can do it with their class. That's a little different because, they're minors, but it can be done where a team does the walk during school time, maybe during their phys ed class or whatever. So there are different ways to become involved with the walk, even if you aren't doing it on that coldest night. So it's getting all those people together and then kind of bringing the whole event together for that night. And it would be done certainly not alone. It'd be in conjunction with me with, making sure that, they're okay and they're on track and that, it's going to be working well. So we're looking for somebody with that drive, maybe the community interest, connections within the community say, hey, Mr. Insurance Guy, come on out, let's get this done. Or, hey, Mr. So-and-so, this garage, that garage, just the connections.
And so for somebody who'd like to apply for that coordinator position, would they get in touch with you the same way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just give me a call and we'll sit down and we'll talk about it.
Well, that's great. I'd certainly love to get involved as a participant next year. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Just to thank you and thank everyone in Fort Erie for the support that you give us year in, year out. We wouldn't be here without you. We need you. We appreciate you, and we thank you.
That's great. And well, listeners, you heard it here on the Fort Erie podcast. You heard it here, maybe not first, but you heard it here again right now. Salvation Army is doing great things in our community and needs your help. Man needs your help. Get involved. Do what you can. Contribute what you can. You can be part of the solution. You can make a difference.
This month in Fort Erie history.
I thought I would try resurrecting this feature. As you may recall, if you've been listening to the Fort Erie podcast for some time, in previous episodes going back a ways, there used to be a segment called This Month in Fort Erie History. It was a recurring segment, and a couple of local historians used to contribute segments to it. And now you're stuck with me and sort of my limited knowledge of Fort Erie history. But I thought I would do a bit of a deep dive today. We're in the month of May. I thought, man, there must be some interesting things that have happened in the town of Fort Erie in some month of May years past. And so I jumped on the Fort Erie Public Library website. There's a whole sort of local history archive that you can go through. And I found a story here that I thought was interesting. It is a headline from the Times Review dating May 23rd, 1973. And that headline reads, Mayor Jack Teal cuts ribbon at Zeller's official opening. So there's actually a photo here, and this is at the entrance to the Zeller store that opened, what is that? I mean, that's 50 years ago, almost, it'd be 50 years ago. 50 years ago, Zeller's opened in Fort Erie. And what impresses me looking through this photo, first and foremost, is if this reporter who's sort of reaching out almost like a lapel mic to the mayor, saying, hey, I don't know, I assume trying to get a comment. If that reporter could see how good technology has got today, because I can only imagine the audio quality that would have come through this little lapel mic must have been awful. But the other thing I observed in this photo is that all of these men, I don't know, the mayor and crew that are at the entrance to Zellers are dressed like to the nines. They all have suits on. The one guy, he looks like he's got a corsage on his lapel. Is that what that's called? The flower on your lapel? Like, I never saw. So I'm gonna share with you in a moment. Zellers was actually my first job. When I was a teenager, when I was in high school, I worked at Zellers. I don't remember any time seeing anybody anywhere near Zellers wearing a suit. Not even the store manager. But here is Mayor. What was his name? It was. Oh my goodness, I'm just pulling up my notes here. Jack Teal, cuts the ribbon at Zellers' official opening. So Jack Teal, obviously before my time. I've only lived in Fort Erie for 9 years. But this is a bit of an interesting story to me. As I mentioned, I shared that I worked at Zellers when I was in high school, but there was a lot of hype just a month or two ago about these sort of Zellers pop-up stores reopening all over the country. And kudos to the Hudson's Bay Company, because I think they did a great job on promo. I just feel like it was one of those all sizzle and no steak type things. Nobody that I've talked to that's gone down to the Penn Center to check out, our sort of local Zellers pop-up has said much of anything about it. Matter of fact, I haven't heard anything about these new Zellers locations in the past, well, really since they all opened. It's really a question, I guess, at this point, just a matter of time before history repeats itself and we see the big Z, disappear again all over the country. But regardless, here in Fort Erie, this was the Zellers store located, I believe, at the County Fair Mall, what was known as the County Fair Mall at the time, the 150,000 square foot mall that has been demolished behind the beer store on Garrison Road, been demolished to make way for, I understand it to be either a retirement home or a long-term care facility that I believe is being operated publicly by the region. There were, however, I hope there's a lot of good memories from Zellers that do live on for people. The Zellers restaurant club sandwich. My store was too small. The Zellers store I worked in didn't have a restaurant, but I used to like going to one of the other stores that did have those club sandwiches. They were something like $5 for a club sandwich and fries. It was amazing. There was, if you can remember, the Zeddy wheel. So Zeddy was the teddy bear for Zellers. And you could put your kid in the little Zeddy, you put a quarter in, and it spins them in a circle. I don't know what kids today would think about that, but that was very cool when I was a kid, if you got to ride the Zeddy wheel. And there was always a certain smell when you went into Zellers. It was the smell of fabrics that had been sitting in a bin waiting for somebody to buy them for decades. It felt that way sometimes. The clearance racks were never ending at Zellers. But as I said, Zellers was my first job when I was 14. That's 24 years ago. I was 14 years old when I got my first job. The starting pay was it was between $7 and $8, almost $8. Nice to see that minimum wage hasn't really changed since back then, I guess. Hey, but that's what minimum wage was. I worked in the stock room, which mostly meant I didn't have to talk to customers too much. It also meant at 14 years old, I mostly just got to sort of get up to shenanigans while I was at work. Because I was in the stock room, if say somebody came to the toys department, and I remember one Christmas, all the kids were hyped about Beyblades. They were sold out everywhere. So the person working in the toys department would call me and say, "Hey, Brent, do we have any more Beyblades in the stock room?" And it had been like the 50th time that day somebody had asked. So I would go, let me go check. And so I'd wander back into the stock room for a little bit and just kind of kick around and that sort of thing, and then pop out and be like, I guess we're fresh out, which of course everybody had been out for months. I think my favorite thing at the time, being 14, is that I got to work with a lot of the sort of the older high school girls that worked at the store, like high school chicks, which was cool for me when I was 14. That was probably the highlight. I never did get to wear the Zeddy Bear costume. I always kind of wish that I would have. If you live here, if you lived here when Zellers was operational in Fort Erie and you ever got to wear the Zeddy Bear costume, call the Byrd Box. Please tell me about it. 289-599-BYRD. Please leave a message and let me know. I was always too scared to put it on because of how old it was. I just assumed it was really crusty and moldy inside. But if you ever got a day to be Zeddy Bear, I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, I'm going to conclude this segment by saying Zellers is, of course, no longer with us, not in any real meaningful sense, but history has preserved this photo back when Fort Erie's very own Zellers store opened at the County Fair Mall. Memories of a better time, maybe for some. Memories of when the lowest price was the law.
News on the Fort Erie Podcast.
I've got a news story here that is so boring. It's almost interesting again. It's, I think you'll see where I'm going with this pretty quickly. I'll give you the headline. This is the only news story that caught my attention last week. And I think it's just because it's so absurd on its face. But the headline reads, Fort Erie councillors discuss noise bylaw. Riveting stuff. Basically, the town was updating its noise bylaw. Most of the, if we'll call it the new iteration of the bylaw, is just the same language carried over from the previous bylaw. But there is a provision in there that created some controversy. We'll call it the tiniest bit of controversy. There is a part of this bylaw that basically says the noise bylaw does not apply to the town when the town is doing town-related work. It basically reads that the operation of equipment by or on behalf of the town for construction projects, general maintenance projects, and get this, emergency projects of the town would basically be exempt. Seems pretty reasonable. If the town is fixing something that's broken, whether it's in the middle of the day or the middle of the night, it seems like a good idea to let them get that work done rather than slapping them with a fine for violating this noise bylaw. The noise bylaw exists to protect you from your, say, disorderly, disrespectful neighbor who has all of their trashy, third cousins who are unemployed in on a Tuesday and they stay up drinking and causing a ruckus till 5 a.m. That's what the noise bylaw is for, not for the town fixing things. But nonetheless, that didn't stop Ward 6 Councillor Anne-Marie Noyce from voicing her concerns that the town was basically giving itself a get-out-of-jail-free card. Basically, Mayor Wayne Redekop jumped in and pointed out that there were occasions where, people working on behalf of the town would have to work outside of regular business hours, such as a water line breaking. He commented that if this, if Ward 6 Councillor Noyce wanted to add some type of wording to include an exemption for exceptional construction projects, he'd be okay with that. Exceptional, okay, being the key word there. But what I don't understand is the way it's written, it already says emergency projects of the town. That's the way it's written. So emergency projects of the town, the mayor says, well, maybe we could put in some wording about exceptional projects, which to me is pretty much the same thing. Nonetheless, that seemed to resolve things. Once that amendment was introduced, all councillors voted and the amendment was approved unanimously. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
The Fort Erie Podcast.
I think that just about concludes things for today. This was episode 53. Be on the lookout for episode 54, which will be on its way shortly. You can subscribe to the Fort Erie Podcast wherever it is you listen to podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, all the usual places. Be sure to subscribe. This show is even on YouTube if you want to subscribe that way. I've never really cared for listening to podcasts on YouTube because you can't close the app and keep listening unless you want to pay for like YouTube Premium, and there's no way I'm doing that. Just subscribe on Spotify. Everybody's got Spotify. Hit the little subscribe button, the little bell thing. You'll get notified when there's a new episode. Quick reminder, if you've got something to squawk about, call the Byrd Box, 289-599-BYRD, BYRD, 289-599-2973. Just to be clear, these messages, you can leave a message on anything. I feel like people are thinking they have to write some sort of, clever dissertation or something before calling in. Nah, it could be a knock-knock joke. I mean, you could call about anything. Actually, you know what? That's a great idea. Call me with your best cringy jokes, your best dad jokes, or whatever you got. I mean, there's a couple folks I follow on TikTok who post like dad jokes every day, and they make me laugh. There's one that goes, "Why do folks in Athens sleep till noon every day? Because Don is tough on Greece." I mean, I love jokes like that. That is, anyway, leave me anything like that. It could be something around town. It could be something good, something bad. It could be a question you've got for the show. Anything you want. 289-599-BYRD, BYRD. But otherwise, that's it. Be well, Fort Erie. I'll be talking with you again soon.
You've been listening to the Fort Erie Podcast with your host, Brent Jones. Never miss an episode. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or visit theforteriepodcast.com.